think the dialogue between Lukashenko and the EU is going well at all. I think the situation since the European Union lifted its sanctions inside Belarus has deteriorated significantly. Just recently, Belarus reportedly executed 2 prisoners, which prompted the EU to issue condemnation of that action. The treatment of minority Poles inside Belarus has also stirred up anxiety in the European Union and within Poland, not surprisingly. And there have been opposition figures and activists who have been recently arrested, rounded up. Yet another NGO denied registration. The EU doesn't seem to be having success with its new engagement policy. Again, when I was in the State Department, I was involved in the sanctions policy against Belarus, where we did coordinate with the European Union in 2006 to impose sanctions together, the US and EU. And I would argue, despite the view of many Europeans, that sanctions worked in the sense that they got the release of political prisoners in Belarus in 2008. I think the European Union has been much too willing to lift all of its sanctions without asking for much in return. And I don't, unfortunately, sense that the European Union is prepared to reimpose sanctions. They just don't like sanctions against Belarus. They worry that if they reimpose sanctions, Belarus will go back to Russia. I think they forget what the whole purpose of sanctions were, which was the behavior of Lukashenko to his own people, not whether Lukashenko and Moscow were close or distant. So I am discouraged by what's been going on inside Belarus and also in the EU-Belarus relationship. We still don't have an ambassador in Minsk. Our embassy is still significantly reduced from what it used to be, from I think 31 Americans down to 5, which has a significant impact on our ability to carry out our mission effectively. I think the relationship is not good. I give credit to Senator Cardin, Congressman Hastings, and others who went to Belarus last summer to when the release of Emanuel Zelt had been imprisoned in Belarus, but there's much more that needs to be done. And the problem is we don't have much leverage other than imposing additional sanctions. And it's an unfortunate state of affairs between our two countries. We don't have problems with the people of Belarus. The problems between the United States and Belarus boil down to basically one man, Mr. Lukashenko, and the way he runs his country. And he is the obstacle to better relations between the United States and Belarus. And he is the reason why sanctions were imposed in the first place. It is because of his authoritarian way of governing. And so it's regrettable that the current state of affairs between our two countries is in such bad shape. We hear that complaint a lot. More should be done to allow not just Belarusian citizens, but other citizens from other countries to come to the United States. This is where matters of security and access sometimes run into each other. But I agree that having more people from Belarus come to the United States is a good thing. We need to do much more of it. But let's also keep in mind that there have been programs that the United States has had with Belarus where the government threw obstacles in the way, where they were not going to allow people to either leave the country or to return to the country if they came to the United States. And so we have had some programs that used to be run out of the State Department that basically were blocked because of the way Lukashenko tried to manipulate the system. But we should do more. Unfortunately, with the small embassy staff we have right now, our ability to process visas is also quite restricted. So this is another area where having the size of the embassy we do is a problem. normalization of relations between Belarus and the United States can be done rather simply if Mr. Lukashenko changes his ways. If he allows critics to run in elections without problems, if he allows NGOs to be registered, if he allows newspapers and other media to operate without problems, if he doesn't put people in jail simply for exercising their freedoms of expression or assembly, if he simply doesn't treat his people the way he does, that's the way to change relations. That's the way to normalize the relationship. And so we're waiting for him to change his ways. I'm not confident that's going to happen. We did ease some of the sanctions we had in place when the political prisoners were ultimately released, Alexander Kazulin being the last one in 2008, but there are now new ones. And so the problem is going to be trying to figure out a way forward where if he takes certain actions that are positive, or more accurately, undoes negative things he's done, then we can respond by lifting some more sanctions. Normalization is a long way away, and I hope that the Obama administration maintains the policy that the Bush administration had in place, which is an offer to engage, but the first steps have to be taken by Lukashenko, and I just don't see that happening much anymore, absent additional pressure coming not just from the United States, but from the European Union. I don't think the United States should get too worked up about meetings between Chavez and Lukashenko. They deserve each other. Russian Prime Minister Putin is also visiting with Chavez. If those are the friends that Lukashenko and Putin want to have, my view is they're sort of welcome to them. That's not to say that we should ignore what's happening, because arms sales that are taking place between even Belarus and Venezuela, but also Russia and Venezuela, can be a concern for us. I don't take all too seriously Venezuela's promises and contracts to provide energy to Belarus. That's not going to be a very feasible and economically efficient way for Belarus to get alternative sources of energy from Russia. And so it's a relationship that I think is based largely on leaders who are ostracized by the international community. And they seem to be able to find friendship because they don't have many other friends.